Hello everyone, my name is Melissa Hernandez and I will be presenting my project called America's New Coal, where I will examine the ways that our current president represents both a charismatic leader and the great man theory. Donald J. Trump, our 45th president, has the characteristics of a charismatic leader. By analyzing the strategies that our president has used in order to gain his followers, we can see why he is a charismatic leader. According to Weber, some of the personalities that define such a leader are things like shaping ideas, being a leader during a difficult time, having supportive followers, and motivating people to follow him. His role as a charismatic leader has advanced him to what we can only define as a cult leader. A cult leader is a person who employs unethically manipulative techniques of persuasion and control designed to advance the goals of the group's leader. In this occasion, Trump wants to enhance the fear and anger that his followers feel. The great man theory is also very well represented when we examine the way that Trump has used his power in office to represent our country. Many Americans had felt betrayed by our system of government, so they inevitably elected someone that would channel their want for change. In an interview, two Trump supporters explained that this was the main reason why they voted for him. One of them said that other politicians are afraid because of their reputation. The next person confirmed this by stating that he says things like they are and isn't afraid to hurt feelings. Eventually, that became Trump. Many people stood behind him because his personality was so different than the average candidate. He made many efforts to connect with his voters, including making disrespectful remarks towards minorities and anyone that didn't agree with him. Since he was so different, he created a divide between the people by sending out these type of messages. This is what makes him a great charismatic leader, because he stands behind the ideas he believes in. While we try to decipher why he is still holding his position in office, we must examine the reasons behind it. First, he represented all the frustration that his voters felt and promised to do something about it. Whether it was kicking out immigrants or sending politicians to jail, he was the voice of the silent majority. Looking at all the evidence, there are several similarities that qualify him to be none other than a cult leader. A prime example of this would be how he uses language to mock his opponents and everyone who doesn't believe in his ideas. This type of behavior will then be exhibited on his followers because they eventually say the same things about anyone who doesn't believe in their all knowing leader. His use of language in most of his rallies are dominant and non-professional. This can be seen in both his interviews and his rallies, where he uses terms such as losers and bad hombres to describe minority groups. His use of slang gives him more of a status as a dominant because he is demonstrating the way that he can break the rules of political formal language and say whatever he wants. Some of the ways that Trump has become America's new cult leader is the way that he manipulates his followers. An example of this is the way that he started to diminish the ethical values that Americans are defined by. One of these ethics are the importance of the united family, which he is clearly against when it comes to talking about migrant children being ripped away from their mothers. This ties back in with the reason why many people support him, and that is because he is so different. As everyone knows, he used to be one of the judges in the show Apprentice, where he gained a lot of attention. We are now seeing that he is treating politics as if it were a reality show, where he is still the one in charge. In the end, it works because instead of politics being uninteresting, he is entertaining the people who will then show more support towards their entertainer. This now brings us to their behavior. It has been seen throughout many cults that the leader hosts group events in order to hype up their followers. In the rallies that our president holds, he highlights the importance of obedience towards him by creating self-righteousness. He then uses this quality to make his followers believe everything he says, and even when he is lying. There is still a more important factor that Trump uses against all of his followers and even his opponents to keep his status as a leader, and that is fear. The use of fear is very powerful because if enough fear is invoked in a group, that group will do anything in order to seek protection. By seeking this protection, they are now tied to the person who has promised to keep them safe. So how does our president provoke this type of fear? Simply with lies. In order to create fear against a certain group, such as immigrants, He generalizes and uses false stereotypes to label every Latin person as a danger. The way that he establishes credibility is by finding one example and using it to justify his lies. Trump is succeeding in his political agenda by creating these false enemies. A great example of this would be how he has repeatedly gone against Muslims and went as far as placing travel bans on certain countries who had large Muslim populations. Although terrorist attacks aren't as frequent as he makes it seem, he still uses them as a way to keep people fearful of all Muslims. The hate and fear that he spreads towards his followers inevitably leads to racism. By revisiting the great man theory, we see that Trump is representing the solution to a fear that many of his voters had. The fear is losing their high status that they had been so accustomed to. With Trump, he reinforces that hierarchy by introducing racial resentment towards the people who are taking away this status by everyone. By being a part of Trump's followers, he strengthens this status by creating fake identities towards minorities and even defending far right groups. While there are a lot of negatives about him, we remember that he still is the general overall representation of the collected consciousness of this nation. When we focus on his political agenda, we see that people voted for him because we needed someone who gets the job done, and so far, Trump has proven his word. In conclusion, we now have a greater understanding as to why he has such supportive followers and the many examples why he is still a great model for a charismatic leader.